Good afternoon, Dr. Karl. It's a pleasure to welcome you back to Phnom Penh.
Good afternoon. A pleasure to be back here.
Before we call you recent lectures on starting your business, and today we are honored to have you lead this effective communication skills workshop for PSBU student, episode 1. How are you feeling such as immersive day exploring communication with our students, and what the rationales behind the structuring in episodes?
Very good question. First of all, I think the students are doing a commendable job. I think a lot of people forget that a lot of Asians already have at least two languages. They have their national language, then they have English as well. And so that's a big achievement. A lot of people from Western countries only have English. So I think the first thing is to acknowledge the fact that while they're learning English, they already have 1.5 languages. And I was really impressed today. I was impressed at the participation. I was impressed at the risk-taking. I was impressed that they're actually willing to have a go at new activities. And as far as the rationale behind it is, like it or not, English is now the universal language. For example, if you go to Malaysia, you don't speak Bahasa. The Malaysian doesn't speak Khmer, but both of you can speak English. So it is the language of communication. That's the rationale behind it. And I think the rationale behind the 2 days is doing the 4 pillars of language: speaking, listening, reading, and writing.
Yes. Given that workshops is tailored specifically for students, could you elaborate on how days 1 address their particular learning and understanding?
Certainly. Today we looked at 2 facets. We looked at listening, and I think people forget how important listening is, and things like body language, eye contact, attentive listening, looking at all the non-verbal communication that happens. So it's not just the words we speak, it's actually the way our body transmits our meaning. So there's non-verbal, there's gestures, there's eye contact, there's facial expressions. So that was part of today. And the second part of it was about writing. And today we were writing an advertisement for a product. And that's a different type of writing. That means you're writing very short, sharp, succinct sentences with the view of persuading and informing people. So today was trying to sell a product.
So speaking about impacts, what feedback you have received from students so far, and what was some positive reaction you observed?
Well, I hope that they enjoyed it. The students, like a lot of Asian students, they're very polite. And so sometimes they'll be reluctant to say if they didn't enjoy something. But the feedback I got seemed to be very genuine and that they enjoyed the class. So I hope they did. A few of the students said that they can look at ways to apply what they learned, and that to me is very important. If they can actually apply it in a real world situation, that makes me feel good as a teacher, that I haven't just given them an academic context, but actually something they can take away and use in the real world.
Thank you, Dr. Karl. So what kinds of activity that you incorporate to maintain their active participation and learning throughout the day?
Good question. We all have different ways of learning. And I think sometimes it's kinesthetic learning, it's actually doing things, doing activities. So today we did a barrier game where the students are trying to describe something to each other facing away from each other. So it means it's really work on their attentive listening skills, where they couldn't see the body language, they couldn't see any non-verbal communication. We did an activity where they're actually looking at trying to transmit or to communicate a design, and they had to do that to another student, and that was a different activity again. A lot of conversation activities as well, and then the students shared. They did questioning to each other, interviewing, and being an interviewer and interviewee.
Yes, so we particularly interested in how this workshop aligns with United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. In addition, in relation to the promoting up quality education SDG 4 and decent work and economic growth SDG 8. Could you share your thoughts on how this effective communication skill can contribute to these goals?
I've always been impressed with PSBU, the university. I like the way that it's inclusive. I like the way it does scholarships for its students. I like the way it's like a big family. And to me, that's very important. What I think is very impressive of PSBU is the access to education. So they focus on giving education to people who are marginalised, people who come from remote or rural backgrounds, people who don't have much money, for example. I think that's very important. And I think having those people having access to quality education is a big step for the future. And that transmits exactly into the SDGs. It's looking at sustainable development. So if you can have, for example, a student getting a good education, going back to his or her village, then using that education, that becomes sustainable change. And that to me is very important. Doing little projects one-off aren't as important as doing something smaller, but doing it continuously. So every month we have teachers coming up here doing courses with the students, and that makes it more sustainable.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time today. Okay, we really appreciate your time.
I
Goodbye,
appreciate
sir.
it too. Okun,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Thank you very much.